Welcome back to Gun Totin' Minnesotan. Today I'm going to discuss a product sent out to the channel by UUQ. I've collaborated with UUQ in the past as they've sent out products and given me a chance just to speak about my experience with them and if I think they hold up to rifle recoil or the standards that I have for shooting. You know, I know not everybody has a $1,000 budget or a $500 budget for their deer rifle, optic, or shooting long range or getting into shooting. And so what I'm trying to do is find some budget optics that still have the necessary components and quality so you can get into shooting at any price point. And this is a sub $50 optic that held up to my really snappy recoil on my 308. I ran this out to 300 yards, had a pretty decent experience with it, and I think I can recommend it towards deer hunters and people getting into shooting and trying out their hand at long range. There's a lot to this optic, and so pay attention to the review. I think you're going to enjoy it if you're on a budget. When you get your 3 to 9 box, you're going to see on the outside it advertises with a wide field of view, shock and recoil proof, fully coated lenses, as well as being fog and waterproof. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look inside. The first thing I see is we have the rings themselves, which are packaged separately. These rings are 1-inch rings that are kind of in a high setting, like that right there. And there's also the tool included you're going to need for tightening those down. Remember, you don't have to crunch them down, just tight enough, firm enough. I tend to start them this way and then finish them just a eighth turn or a quarter turn using this tool right here afterwards. And inside you have a couple more things like a warranty card as well as a lens cloth. Put that aside. And here's your warranty card. So if you want to activate your warranty, you can head to this right here. That's a UUQ QR code, which will get you to where you need to go to register your product. And then here is the scope. So it comes with the scope caps installed already. Looks pretty good. Now obviously I've already had this out of the package. I've been using it. I just want to give you an idea of what you're getting when you open up the package itself. Then you also have this right here, which is your instructions in case you're not sure about the parts, the components, what to do or what each piece does. This will tell you about each piece as well as kind of how to do some basic maintenance or mounting. Looking at the UUQ 3 to 9 by 40, the first feature I'm going to show you is under this cap, and this would be your ocular focus or your reticle focus. So it's pretty tight, and then it'll loosen up as you give it a little shift like that, and that's actually making your reticle itself less clear or more clear. The right way to adjust one of these is by looking at a blank wall or a clear sky and not staring at the reticle, but just taking little peeks as you make small adjustments. I would say from my eye, you know, I have pretty good vision in one of my eyes, and it just tends to be that it's all the way to the right to make the reticle clear, but you're going to need to test that for your eye. As soon as you get this out of the package, make sure you make that adjustment, and then when it's tight for your eye and the reticle looks good, then you can throw on the cap again. It does come with these included scope caps here, and they seem like they're going to hold up just fine. They are plastic, and they help, you know, fold out of the way so your ball cap perhaps won't hit it. Otherwise, you can always just move it a little bit to the right so your ball cap doesn't run into it as you're shooting, and it's kind of covering up some of your ocular bell there. That's one way that you could do it so it's not going to inhibit that function. Otherwise, you could just take them off like that, and that's what I do very often, is just take them off if I feel like it's going to be an issue, and then if weather is coming in or it's going to rain, then I'm going to throw them back on like that. Moving on to the magnification ring here, which is very, very smooth, great quality, good texture on it. It's not sloppy, it's not loose as far as the tolerances go, and calibration for your reticle is going to be on 9 power. That's an important feature to know in these types of optics. 3 power right there and 9 power are going to do different things as far as the reticle goes. So if you zero it on 9 power, which you should, that's what you want to shoot it on if you're actually using the reticle and those mill type holdovers that are inside the reticle. If you zero it on 9 power and then you decide to shoot it on 5 power, those mill type holdovers are not going to be calibrated exactly the same. It's going to be a little different. So make sure you shoot it on 9 power each time if you want to have the same point of impact. If you're not so concerned about that, you're just shooting for groups or for fun, yeah, maybe you'd knock it down a little bit. And if you're hunting and you're shooting on 3 power, it's not going to be so much that you completely miss the deer. That's still on you if you miss the deer. I would say most of the time when I've shot this optic, it's either on 3 power or on 9 power, and it's easy to get from one end of the spectrum to the other. Nice smooth run there. Does not have illumination or side parallax. It is a fixed parallax optic, probably around 100 yards. Underneath the turrets, I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and so we can get a better look. By the way, don't worry about this. This is just a apparatus I attached to my optic so that I can get those reticle shots, but it does not come with this. It does come with these rings, these included high rings here, which have been able to hold 0 on this 308 rifle. Now going to the actual clicks here, the clicks themselves are going to be like 1/4 minute clicks, and 1/4 minute clicks in general are kind of the standard. You're going to see those on most rifles. So if you had an optic in the past that was more of a 3 to 9 style deer hunting type optic, I'm sure this is very familiar to you. You don't need any special tools for this. You just unscrew this and they are finger click adjustable, and so you can go back and forth just pushing this knob left or right. And it's going to be the same for the windage knob as well. The caps are nice and low profile, so it's not going to cover up your field of view. It's not going to be big and snag on anything if you're dragging this through the woods on your deer rifle. This optic has a 40mm objective bell, which is going to be enough to let in some light, and it's probably complementary to this 1-inch tube. I think this combination right here is pretty standard and compatible with most rifles. You can see on the rifle I'm running here with the high rings and the 40mm objective, I'm not having issues running into my barrel for clearance. Even if I had a 20 MOA set of rings or a 30 MOA set of rings, I don't think I would have that issue here, so I'm not overly concerned. One thing you're going to want to consider is this scope does not have enough internal travel to be set on a 30 MOA rail, and perhaps not enough on a 20 MOA rail for a 100-yard 0. So you're going to want to go with a 0 MOA base or 0 MOA rings in general so that you can zero this at 100 yards, which most of you are, because the parallax again is set at 100 yards or so. In testing, I was able to run this optic from 100 yards to 200 yards and then out to 300 yards, making consecutive hits. Had no problems at all making impacts on 8-inch targets, all the way up to a big silhouette that I was using at 300 yards. But it was impacting right where I needed it to. The reticle has enough information in it with those mill-type holds, first the dots, then the chevron arrow types. It has enough information in there that with my 308 rifle, I actually could shoot this out to 500 yards without dialing and without needing to use the turrets at all after my 0. I could just simply use holdover with that. And so a lot of people might misunderstand and think that if an optic doesn't have exposed turrets on top, that somehow it's going to limit its distance significantly. But I'm telling you, I can still shoot this out to 500 yards with the information that is in the reticle. Now, a reticle is placed in glass, it's etched into glass, and the glass needs to be complementary for what the reticle has. And if you're going to use holdovers, you're going to need decent enough glass to use the holdovers without skewing information and changing your actual holds and your data. And I would say that this glass is adequate for the holds. It doesn't have so much chromatic aberration that you can't use the bottom of the reticle. Even if you're shooting this out to extended ranges, I think you're going to be able to make out your image, your target, clear enough to make impacts on deer-sized targets, or perhaps maybe on silhouette-sized targets at extended ranges. You know, a lot of the color trueness and the fidelity in general is going to be thanks to the coatings on this type of optic. Coatings help improve light and brightness in general, and I think there is a bright enough, light enough image in this for the price point. Considering what you're going to pay for something like this, this is twice as good as what you would have gotten 10 years ago. The optics quality in general, glass quality in general, has been improving so much every year, and this would be an example of that at this price point for sure. This optic has a 40mm objective bell, which is going to be enough to let in some light, and it's probably complementary to this 1-inch tube. I think this combination right here is pretty standard and compatible with most rifles. You can see on the rifle I'm running here with the high rings and the 40mm objective, I'm not having issues running into my barrel for clearance. Even if I had a 20 MOA set of rings or a 30 MOA set of rings, I don't think I would have that issue here, so I'm not overly concerned. One thing you're going to want to consider is this scope does not have enough internal travel to be set on a 30 MOA rail, and perhaps not enough on a 20 MOA rail for a 100-yard zero. So you're going to want to go with a 0 MOA base or 0 MOA rings in general, so that you can zero this at 100 yards, which most of you are, because the parallax again is set at 100 yards or so. So who would get the most out of an optic like this? Well, I think there's a few people in a few different categories. Obviously, number one is going to be hunters. 3 to 9 is a classic hunter range. You can do a lot with that. You could take a shot on 3 power on a deer at 25 yards, and parallax wouldn't be so much of an issue because you reduced magnification. And this optic, having a parallax set at around 100 yards, that is more for calibration of the reticle. It's not really going to be too much of an issue on big game animals inside of 100 yards. As long as you knock down that power, you'll have less of a parallax error. The image quality will appear better to your eye anyways, and you'll also have a brighter image, which is really nice. And I think folks who are going to shoot paper routinely or pretty often at 100 yards, maybe steel at 100 yards, you're going to appreciate this optic because you definitely can get the nice, clear, sharp contrast image at 100 yards, yet you can still use it to go beyond 100 yards, and you have enough mils there. Like I said, on a 0 MOA base, you have enough to zero it at 100 yards and get out to 500 yards with something like a 308, perhaps with a 223 as well. So a lot of people are going to find that attractive, and people who are on a budget. If you're on a budget and you need an optic that is decent, has adequate glass, and has function, I think this scope has plenty to offer you at this price point. Because it has that milliradian type or style reticle, it gives you the chance to write down data, collect information when you're at the range, and know those consistent holdovers at distance, and it has the glass to meet it at that point. And so I think that's probably the majority of people who are going to really find value in this. Obviously, UUQ has plenty of other optics. If this is not exactly what you were looking for, check them out on Amazon. They have other products there. This is not their only 3 to 9. This is not their only optic that they sell. They have plenty of other ones, and there might be something that is more up your alley, particularly for red dots as well. That's something you can check out my channel very soon. I'm going to have some reviews on that and some use on ARs or AKs as well. So stay tuned to the channel, and I'm hoping to bring you a little bit more from UUQ in the next month. Check these guys out on Amazon.